How does it feel in Nashville at the moment? You got the election looming, you got the COVID thing happening. I mean,
Right. Well, I mean, I'm fine. I'm at home, and all is well. I'm working at home, but it's a strange time. But it's been going on for a while now, so
I know
gotta make the most of it.
I guess it's the new normal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, every day is sort of a new normal. So, but we're fine here in our neighborhood, in our house, and our family. So, uh, Billy Joe Shaver passed away today, but Jerry Jeff Walker died this
I
week.
know.
We lost John Prine. We lost David Olney, our across the street neighbor. So it's, there's many other people, and it's
Yes.
just part of life. But and creating music and enjoying that part of it. So yeah, it's all right.
Yes, indeed. It has been, and I see you've kind of redefined the term spring break with your new album.
Well, that's what I thought of. I was like, well, this is like spring break, like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want,
Yeah.
but you can never leave.
Mm. Yeah. So I've read the press and stuff, so I kind of understand the premise behind the album. But give me just run through for me what the process was within you to come up with the songs that comprise this record.
Well, I was in Australia on March 13 and headed for the Blue Mountain Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And from Melbourne, and in the Melbourne airport that morning, early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, all my dates in the spring started to be, canceled. And then the Blue Mountains Festival was canceled.
Yeah.
And this is boarding the plane to fly to Sydney to get the rental car and drive up to Blue Mountains. And so, well, my wife was with me, and we looked at each other and said, well, maybe we'll go to Sydney and check in with our friends for a day or two and figure out what to do. And then our youngest daughter called and said, they're telling us not to come back to university because she's on spring break.
Right.
And so
coincidentally,
there you go. So she said, they're telling us not to come back. We may come back in a few weeks and gather our things and go back home. The school year is over. So we went to the Qantas counter, and just, 3 hours later, we were flying to Dallas.
Crazy, man.
So then I came home and had no work, and I had some studio work. I do a lot of studio work. So I chipped away at home studio work. And then I started to record some songs that I had written with other artists. So some of these songs, there's 2 songs I wrote with Todd Snyder, a couple of songs I wrote with Adrian Young and other people. And I'd always wanted to just have a version. So I started recording, and I wanted guitar and vocal, and I wanted it to be live. And I just wanted to have these recordings for myself, something to do while I'm figuring out what I'm going to do. Yeah. And so then I started to write songs, and it was quick. I mean, it was like in a week, I sort of recorded a few old songs that I'd never recorded. And then I wrote, and then John Prine passed away on April 7th, I believe. And so April 8th, I wrote the late great John Prine blues. And then I wrote All Fall Down, and I had written Dig in a Ditch with a Spoon, and so the songs just sort of started. And My Right Wing Friend came out of the political situation.
Yeah, and you were on John Prine's label for a while, right?
Yeah, back in the 90s. So yeah, that it all just kind of came together, and then I realized that I had made a record, whether it was going to be released or not. I realized that I had made it.
Right.
And so I mixed it, sent it to my mastering engineer, and he gave me a couple of tweaks to make, like he always does, and I made the tweaks, and then I thought, well, I might as well put something out during this time, because it's, when else are you going to put out some of these songs? And so I did, and I'm glad I did, and now it's out. And I mean,
so what's the reaction been? It's been out for a few days now. Last Friday, I think it came out.
Yeah, so. And I've had a couple of singles out previously, so the reaction's been very positive. It's been very good. And on the same day my record was released, the new Shamika Copeland record came out. Right. And I produced it and co-wrote like 7 or 8 of the songs. So it's been a real fruitful time as far as creativity and having material release that I helped create and helped write.
Uncivil war, how long must we fight this uncivil war? Same old wounds we opened before. Nobody wins in uncivil war.
So
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that on Shemitah Copeland just briefly. No, I don't want to get away from yours too much, but how did you get involved in that? And just how did that work with you and her working together?
I worked on a record called Outskirts of Love that I think came out in 2015 or 2016, and I was brought in by the producer Oliver Wood, who's from the Wood Brothers, and he called me in to play some guitar. And then the next record, he bowed out of producing, and he suggested that they ask me to produce. So I produced a record called America's Child that came out in 2018. And I co-wrote some songs, and it went well. So they asked me back for this record, which became Uncivil War. And we wrote for the whole record. You know, we wrote a whole bunch of songs, and I produced and played on it. And it's out now too. So I'm happy with this, being able to, you know, make some sort of I don't know about saying a statement, but having something to say during this time and having music out, because that's what I do. You might as well.
Yep.
Feels like a time when you could chime in and say, "Boy, can't we all come together on something? Don't we have something in common, especially here in the United States?"
Yeah.
And,
well, you kind of made a statement in 2006 with that Americanitis album. Yeah. So it seems
you can only make that statement so many times. I mean, you can make it over and over again. It's always necessary to say, if you believe, you know, peace is better than war, or love is better than fear, or whatever. That's what I believe. To say it over and over again is good. Sometimes in the ensuing years, I've put out records that related to gratitude and long-term relationships, and then collaborations with friends and bands that I'm in. So this time around, you know, more songs came. We All Fall Down, which I suppose is about division, and then My Right Wing Friend, which is about division too, and about it's really about a long-term friendship, but it taps into the political divide. And both of that and late great John Prine Blues touch on the passing of John Prine, and obviously it was important to me. I've been a huge fan, like so many people, and I was on his label and had shared the stage with him numerous times and played his festival back in November. So we shared a conversation on the ramp up to the stage as I was heading down and he was heading up, and he seemed so happy, and my kids were friends with his kids. So there's a lot of connections there, and I'm still working on that David Olney tribute too, because he passed away and he literally lived right across the street here.
Oh,
so
man.
we
were lucky enough. He came to New Zealand last year and played, and we all kind of bowed down at his feet, and you know what I mean? It was an amazing show. Yeah. One song I wanted to touch on, because it's a little bit different than the rest of them, is Cape Henry. And it's more of a story song than the other ones that you do. So maybe you can tell me a little bit where that came from.
I served as a sailor back in 81. I can't say I'm sorry. I volunteered for what I'd done. We trained and we waited. We would not be outdone. And then one day, 6 battleships came out of the rising sun.
I wrote that with Todd Snyder in about 1995 or 6. We were on tour and we were on the coast of Virginia, and there was a historical marker that marked a Revolutionary War naval battle. And it was a battle that the colonists lost the battle to the British Navy, but the resources the British Navy had to send down to fight the battle weakened their efforts farther north, and it hastened the end of the Revolutionary War. And but the story is about, so we just read the marker and thought, oh, that's interesting. I never knew they had a naval battle down here by Virginia Beach. And then we went back to the van or the bus or whatever we were in, and we made up a story about a soldier. And I wanted to, I've released that song before, but I wanted to release it again in this more confident way that I played it this time, and with the bottleneck guitar and everything, but also because I've been working with this group called Songwriting with Soldiers since 2017. And the most famous proponent of that has been Mary Gaucher's Rifles and Rosary Beads record, which is from the same organization. She wrote all the songs with combat veterans, American combat veterans. And I've been involved in it now, and I'm deeply involved in it now. It's one of my main pursuits right now because of the demand for therapy for combat veterans with post-traumatic stress,
right.
PTSD as they call it. And
yep.
And so in 2021, I'll be doing 2 of these trips a month probably. And so I'm glad I signed up to be a songwriter, and to have a new reason to write a song and a new purpose for a song is amazing after all these years, Yeah. So I do that. And so Cape Henry is on there because it was the first song I wrote for a soldier, even though it was a soldier from,
way back when.
240 years ago. Yeah.
Another one you co-wrote with Todd Snyder is Rocket Fuel, which has got more of a bluegrass thing going on it.
Rocket fuel, buddy, I'm running on rocket fuel. Flying high, feeling cool, buddy, I'm running.
Yeah, we wrote it for his record Viva Satellite that came out in 1997, and it was a real rock and roll version, like a real kind of Neil Young and Crazy Horse kind of version. And I always liked the song as a little folk song, and it's not a story, but it's a vignette. It shows the lives of these young kids around Memphis, Tennessee, in a poor working class neighborhood, and their sort of unsupervised lives. And one of the things I like about that song is the line, the door's wide open with the TV on. I was raised to turn off the lights when you leave the room, close the doors, turn off the light, all that stuff. And so these kids were unsupervised, running wild, and we were admiring their wildness and their freedom, but there was also a sense that some of them were probably headed for some trouble, headed for jail, or so we really just wrote that song from the point of view of a kid, but maybe with the the omniscient view of the writer, where it talks about the past and the future, and inserted that sense of worry. But I've always liked that song, so I wanted to do it just with mandolin and vocal, and I thought that was a fun way to do it. And so that there's a little blast of energy on the record too.
And while we're talking about lyric lines, and I think my favorite was on Philadelphia, Mississippi, where she never felt at home until she ran away.
Yeah.
She came from Philadelphia, Mississippi. She never felt at home there until she ran away. She never felt at home until she ran away. She never felt at home until she ran away.
Yeah, I wrote that. I wrote that with my friend David Zolo, who's from Iowa, and he's part of that roots rock scene in Iowa that includes Greg Brown and Bo Ramsey and other great people. And now Iris DeMint lives up there because she's married to Greg Brown. That sort of Midwestern roots scene.
Right.
And Zolo's a piano player, a great writer, and lives in Iowa City, which is a great writing city, and with the Iowa Writers Workshop. But so we wrote that together, and I just am charmed by that place name, Philadelphia, Mississippi. And of course, it's more famous for the Mississippi burning story,
right?
That was made into a movie about the civil rights movement and those murders of those civil rights workers. But it's also there's an old state fair there, the Neshoba County, a county fair, the Neshoba County Fair, and so there's also sort of a charming, whimsical side to this dark side of history of a place, which I guess all places can be defined by the history, but doesn't mean that's all that ever happened there. But
right.
But anyway, I just like the place name. I like, Paris, Tennessee, Paris, Texas, Havana,
Right.
Alabama,
That's
Cuba,
what came to my
Alabama.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Philadelphia, Mississippi. And I just thought when I came up with the way you sing, she came from Philadelphia, Mississippi, there's always sort of a chuckle in the audience, like, oh, I thought he was going to say something else. PA. I thought he was going to say Philadelphia, PA. But so yeah, that song became a woman running away from. I was talking to a friend today who's from Mississippi, Pat Sansone, who's a member of Wilco, and also a band called the Autumn Defense. And I interviewed him for my podcast, and he said I grew up in, he grew up in Meridian, Mississippi, which is another small city in Mississippi, and he said, even though nobody was putting me down for anything I was doing, I couldn't wait to get out of there. And then he moved an hour and a half away to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where the University of Southern Mississippi is. And still, he said the difference was a world away, because in a college town, university town, there's bands and you can be in a cool band.
Yeah.
And there was nothing like that in Meridian, even though Jimmy Rogers was from there and the PV Corporation is there. So there's lots of musical stuff there.
Yeah.
But, and I understood that because I'm from Mobile, Alabama, where again, there's plenty of music from there. And there were great musicians there when I was coming up. Yeah. But nobody was really doing anything but just playing in the bars. And I wanted
you don't really hear about the mobile sound, do you?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Muscle Shoals, maybe, but
Muscle Shoals, Tulsa, all that. Right. But yeah.
Yeah. And then Pat moved to New Orleans, and that sort of opened it all up for him. So now he then he joined Wilco, and then he moved to Chicago for a while. Now he's back in Nashville because he realizes he's the kind of musician that thrives in Nashville, because here he can still be in Wilco, but he produced that Emma Swift wonderful Dylan cover record.
Oh yeah.
He's working on the new Robin Hitchcock record. And, so there's just a world of just 4 musicians here. And it's, as you know, everybody knows that about Nashville, but it's pretty diverse. You can work with Brendan Benson or Garth Brooks, or Jack White or, Del McCurry here in Nashville. So it's pretty cool.
And so you are obviously finding Nashville to your liking.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here 32 years. So
yeah.
I better like it or get out.
Yeah. So is there a scene is stuff happening now with everything going around, or is everything locked down?
Well, there's a lot of file sharing for recordings.
Right.
And I've played on about 4 or 5 records during this time, where we mask up and bring our hand sanitizer and sit far apart and record in the studio. And I've done 2 records that I did. One was for an artist, Bridget O'Neill, who's from Ireland.
Right.
And she was on Zoom attending the set. She had done her guitar and vocals at home and then sent them to us, and we played while she was on Zoom, and she would comment and tell us what she liked and didn't like, and then we'd make a rough mix as quick as we could and send it to her. And another artist was in Canada. So those were 2 projects that were literally done this way.
Right.
While we were in the studio as a band, and then we're asking the artist, what do you think? You like that?
Yeah.
And so it can be done. And all the things that people have been talking about for the last 20 years, like we'll hook up via Ethernet and record together. Well, that's not quite happening that way, but pretty close. I think that's good. I think there's nothing. Pat Sansone and I were talking today about how when we were growing up, and we both had brushes with the gatekeepers of the big time sort of let us in.
Yeah.
And there's the room they let you in, it might be the wrong room.
Right.
You might be in there going, shit, I thought I was going to be, and that kind of happened to both of us. And he had an amazing encounter with Ahmet Ertegun, the legendary Atlantic Records, founder, that was just, he had this one shot in it, and he didn't even know he was supposed to be performing. And they handed him a weird guitar that he never touched and said, okay, we'll play some songs for the entire Atlantic Records staff.
No pressure.
And Ahmet, who's on the phone right now, but he'll get off the phone in a minute and look over at you. And, and he was like 22 years old. So, we talked about that, the gatekeepers. But now, if you have a song you like, and even if you just recorded it on your phone, you could put it up on Bandcamp, and theoretically the whole world could pay 50 cents for it and buy it.
Yep,
And that's, And that may be, it may be lamented that there isn't as much of a music business as there was.
Right.
But the access from the artist to the audience and vice versa is
Do you think it's kind
instant.
of leveled the playing field or kind of equalized everybody?
I don't know about the business side of it, but I do know that, well, for instance, if you don't like the pittance that you get paid by streaming, then you can, like Emma Swift's new record. Even,
Yep.
I mean, Bob Dylan wrote the songs, but
Yeah.
but it's only available digitally through Bandcamp. Like
Yep,
she's
yep.
literally said, I'm not doing Spotify. I'm not doing all these other things. And I haven't done that yet because I like to sort of have my music anywhere I can put it. So my music's
Sure.
on Bandcamp and Spotify and Apple Music and on vinyl and, you know, so I'm still playing with that model. But
Yeah.
I do think that I think making a living at music is still sort of a just up to, well, more than ever up to the individual. There was a
Yeah.
time when I had a publishing deal in Nashville and a record deal in New York, and now it's just me. And I'm more comfortable with that. A record like Spring Break would have never happened with a traditional label. You know, there would have been a release schedule, and instead I was able to make it, mix it, master it, do the artwork, and get the vinyl made. Even pressing vinyl on colored vinyl in time to have a release that quick. So only an indie record could be that way.
Yeah.
And
so are you thinking ahead to the next project?
Yeah.
What's rolling around in your head?
Well, I have some songs that I've written, more songs I've written during this time that are sort of pertinent to this time.
Yep.
So I may just put those out in that sort of Bandcamp format, and then see about a physical release, because I've just released a record, but maybe in the next couple of months release a few songs. And then I've got a long running, more rock oriented project and even more hailing back to my old pop rock kind of roots, where I was in a jangly band that was on college radio in America, Will and the Bushmen. And
that's right.
And so there's songs that I've written over the years, and even in the last couple of years. So I think I'm going to do a similar thing where I, you know, maybe do an EP at a time or 10 songs at a time, but there's probably 2 or 3 records worth of those kind of songs that I've been working on. And my neighbor across the alley back there is a pro drummer, and he comes from the old Boston rock scene. And so we're both kind of the same age, and we come out of this same little indie rock scene from like the late 80s.
Right.
And then now we're in, you know, roots and country and folk and blues and all this other music. And that is all, it's all tied together, of course. But, you know, we all grew up listening to the band and, you know, Madman Across the Water and the Rolling Stones when they played acoustic guitars, or, you know, a lot of people, even in Nashville, their first country music they ever heard was the Rolling Stones or the Kinks.
Girl with the faraway eyes.
Yeah. And so, and then maybe delved into the real deal and I grew up with Hank Williams because my parents.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm working on a project and those two things. And then some, of course, always music for other people where I'm working in the studio, and always writing, and the songwriting with Soldiers project too. At some point I need to do my own release of those songs, because then I've written about 30 songs with veterans, and it's an amazing project.
I'll bet. Yeah. Very cool. Well, probably going to be a new genre in the record stores, COVID rock or whatever they want to call it. You know, and it's starting
I used to be
already.
Co-writer. Now I'm a COVID writer. COVID rock.
There you go. Very good. Well, thank you for taking time to talk to me. I appreciate it. It's very exciting. I mean, all this music and the accessibility of everyone to talk about everything has been fantastic. So
yeah, really, it's a
good
godsend.
things there. Yeah, and hang in there. I hope the election goes
too.
well.
Thank you. Me too.
All right.
I was the first one in line on early voting. Oh boy.
There you go.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.